How simply awful, Matilda said. Did you cry nearly all the time? Only when I was alone, Miss Honey said. I wasn't allowed to cry in front of her, but I lived in fear. What happened when you left school? Matilda asked. I was bright pupil. Miss Honey said, I could easily have got into university, but there was no question of it. Why not, Miss Honey? Because I was needed at home to do the work. Then how did you become a teacher? Matilda asked. There is a teacher's training college in Reading. Miss Honey said, that's only 40 minutes bus ride away from here. I was allowed to go there on condition I came straight home again every afternoon to do the washing and ironing and to clean the house and cook the supper. How old were you then? Matilda asked. When I went into teacher's training, I was 18. Miss Honey said. You could have just packed up and walked away, Matilda said. Not until I got a job, Miss Honey said. And don't forget, I was by then dominated by my auntie to such an extent that I wouldn't have dared. You can't imagine what it's like to be completely controlled like that by a strong personality. It turns you to jelly, so that's it. That's the sad story of my life. Now I've talked enough. Please don't stop, Matilda said. You haven't finished it yet. How did you manage to get away from her in the end and come and live in this funny little house? Ah, that was something, Miss Sunny said. I was proud of that. Tell me, Matilda said. Well, Miss Sunny said, when I got my teacher's job, the aunt told me I owed her a lot of money. I asked her why. She said, because I've been feeding you for all these years and buying your shoes and your clothes. She told me it added up to thousands, and I had to pay her back by giving her my salary for the next 10 years. I'll give you £1 a week pocket money, she said, but that's all you're going to get. She even arranged with the school authorities to have my salary paid directly into her own bank. She made me sign the paper. You shouldn't have done that, Matilda said. Your salary was your chance of freedom. I know, Miss Honey said. But by then I had been her slave nearly all my life, and I hadn't the courage or the guts to say no. I was still petrified of her. She could still hurt me badly. So how did you manage to escape? Matilda asked. Ah, Miss Honey said, smiling for the first time. That was 2 years ago. It was my greatest triumph. Please tell me, Matilda said. I used to get up very early and go for walks while my aunt was still asleep, Miss Honey said. And one day I came across this tiny cottage. It was empty. I found out who owned it. It was a farmer. I went to see him. Farmers also get up very early. He was milking his cows. I asked him if I could rent his cottage. You can't live there, he cried. It's got no conveniences, no running water, no nothing. I want to live there, I said. I'm a romantic. I've fallen in love with it. Please rent it to me. You're made, he said, but if you insist, you're welcome to it. The rent will be 10 pence a week. Here's 1 month's rent in advance, I said, giving him 40 pence. And thank you so much. How super! Matilda cried. So suddenly you had a house all of your own. But how did you pluck up the courage to tell the aunt? That was tough, Miss Honey said, but I steeled myself to do it. One night, after I had cooked her supper, I went upstairs and packed the few things I possessed in a cardboard box, and came downstairs and announced I was leaving. I've rented a house, I said. My aunt exploded. Rented a house, she shouted. How can you rent a house when you have only £1 a week in the world? I've done it, I said. And how are you going to buy food for yourself? I'll manage, I mumbled and rushed out of the front door. Oh, well done you, Matilda cried. So, you were free at last. I was free at last. Miss Honey said, I can't tell you how wonderful it was. But have you really managed to live here on £1 a week for 2 years? Matilda asked. I most certainly have, Miss Honey said. I pay 10 pence rent, and the rest just about buys me paraffin for my stove and for my lamp, and a little milk and tea and bread and margarine. That's all I need, really. As I told you, I have a jolly good talk in at the school lunch. Matilda stared at her. What a marvelously brave thing Miss Honey had done. Suddenly she was a heroine in Matilda's eyes. Isn't it awfully cold in the winter? She asked. I've got my little paraffin stove, Miss Honey said. You'd be surprised how snug I can make it in here. Do you have a bed, Miss Honey? Well, not exactly, Miss Honey said, smiling again. But they say it's very healthy to sleep on a hard surface. All at once, Matilda was able to see the whole situation with absolute clarity. Miss Honey needed help. There was no way she could go on existing like this indefinitely. You would be a lot better off, Miss Honey, she said, if you gave up your job and drew unemployment money. I would never do that, Miss Honey said. I love teaching. This awful aunt, Matilda said. I suppose she's still living in your lovely old house. Very much so, Miss Honey said. She's still only about 50. She will be around for a long time yet. And do you think your father really meant her to own the house forever? I'm quite sure he didn't, Miss Honey said. Parents will often give a guardian the right to occupy the house for a certain length of time, but it is really nearly always left in trust for the child. It then becomes the child's property when he or she grows up. Then surely it is your house, Matilda said. My father's will was never found, Miss Honey said. It looks as though somebody destroyed it. No prizes for guessing who, Matilda said. No prizes, Miss Honey said. But if there is no will, Miss Honey, then surely the house goes automatically to you. You are the next of kin. I know I am, Miss Honey said. But my aunt produced a piece of paper supposedly written by my father, saying that he leaves the house to his sister-in-law in return for her kindness in looking after me. I'm certain it's a forgery, but no one can prove it. Couldn't you try? Matilda said. Couldn't you hire a good lawyer and make a fight of it? I don't have the money to do that, Miss Honey said. And you must remember that this aunt of mine is a much respected figure in the community. She has a lot of influence. Who is she? Matilda asked. Miss Honey hesitated a moment. Then she said softly, Miss Trunchbull. The names. Miss Trunchbull, Matilda cried, jumping about a foot in the air. You mean she is your aunt? She brought you up? Yes, Miss Honey said. No wonder you were terrified, Matilda cried. The only day we saw her grab a girl by the pigtails and threw her over the playground fence. You haven't seen anything, Miss Honey said. After my father died, when I was 5 and a half, she used to make me bath myself all alone. And if she came up thought I hadn't washed properly, she would push my head under the water and hold it there. But don't get me started on what she used to do. That won't help us at all. No, Matilda said, it won't. We came here, Miss Honey said, to talk about you, and I've been talking about nothing but myself the whole time. I feel like a fool. I am much more interested in just how much you can do with those amazing eyes of yours. I can move things, Matilda said. I know I can. I can push things over. How would you like it? Matilda said, Miss Honey said, if you made some very cautious experiments to see just how much you can move and push. Quite surprisingly, Matilda said, if you don't mind, Miss Honey, I think I would rather not. I want to go home now and think about all the things I've heard this afternoon. Miss Honey stood up at once, of course. She said, I have kept you here far too long. Your mother will be starting to worry. She never does that, Matilda said, smiling. But I would like to go home now, please, if you don't mind. Come along then, Miss Honey said. I'm sorry I gave you such a rotten tea. You didn't at all, Matilda said. I loved it. The two of them walked all the way to Matilda's house in complete silence. But Miss Honey sensed that Matilda wanted it that way. The child seemed so lost in thought. She hardly looked where she was walking. And when they reached the gate of Matilda's home, Miss Honey said, You had better forget everything I told you this afternoon. I won't promise to do that, Matilda said, but I will promise not to talk about it to anyone anymore, not even to you. I think that would be wise, Miss Honey said. I won't promise to stop thinking about it, though, Miss Honey, Matilda said. I've been thinking about it all the way back from your cottage, and I believe I got just a tiny little bit of an idea. You mustn't, Miss Honey said. Please forget it. I would like to ask you 3 last things. Before I stop talking about it, Matilda said. Please will you answer them, Miss Honey? Miss Honey smiled. It was extraordinary, she told herself, how this little snip pet of a girl seemed suddenly to be taking charge of her problems, and with such authorities, too. Well, she said, that depends on what the questions are. The first thing is this, Matilda said. What did Miss Trunchbull call your father when they were around the house at home?